Hello, welcome to this masterclass. In this masterclass, we're going to be talking about companion planting with herbs. Now, this is the third gardening masterclass we've done. So if you haven't checked out the other two gardening classes, be sure to add those to this one and make sure you've watched all three, because this one builds on the other two that we've already done. Today, we're going to talk about companion planting with herbs. Now, we're going to talk about other parts of companion planting as well in this masterclass, but let's start with herbs in this unit. In this lesson, you will learn the principles of regenerative gardening, the benefits of companion planting, which herbs are important companions to vegetables, and how to use herbs in integrative pest management. When we grow food and medicine, we can't just extract plants from the soil as if we're miners, because eventually the soil will give up. It's important as we grow both food and medicine that we also heal the land. Regenerative agriculture is the concept that we can heal both ourselves and the land by growing food and medicine. Regenerative agriculture is all about healing the soil. Healthy soils produce healthy food and healthy medicine. There are 5 principles of regenerative agriculture that we're going to focus on. Number 1, keep the soil covered. You never want to leave bare soil for a season, because it opens it to soil degradation, to being blown away by the wind, and also there's nothing for the soil life to feed on if the soil is bare. Also, we want to minimize soil disturbance. So we want to avoid things like rototilling or plowing, because the less soil disturbance there is, the more that the soil microbiome can continue to grow and establish itself. Every time we disturb the soil, and I'm not talking about making a hole to put a plant in, but I'm talking about major disturbances like plowing or like rototilling or like spraying herbicides or pesticides. Every time we disturb the soil, we disturb the soil's microbiome, and it has to rebuild. Principle number 3, maximize crop diversity. And that's really what we're going to emphasize in this particular lesson. Monocropping is bad for the environment, and it's bad for the crops, and it invites pests. So we don't want to do monocropping, even in our garden. We want to maximize crop diversity. And we want to maintain, principle number 4, living roots in the ground year-round. That means don't do the cleanup of your garden in the fall. Maintain living roots in the ground year-round. And number 5, which we won't be talking about in this lesson, is integrate livestock into your plan. Now, I personally have chickens. Chickens are a great companion to gardening. Ducks are as well. However, that's beyond the scope of this particular masterclass. Companion planting satisfies 4 out of the 5 principles we just talked about. Regenerative agriculture principle number 1. By using nitrogen-fixing cover crops and mulch, we keep the soil covered. This encourages mycorrhizal relationships between plants and fungi bacteria, and we're going to do a deep dive into that mycorrhizal relationship in lesson 3 of this masterclass, so hang tight. It also prevents erosion, it minimizes soil compaction because there's something growing there, and it encourages soil life. Regenerative agriculture, principle number 2. By using raised beds, permaculture growing zones, and mulch, we reduce the need for tilling and minimize soil disturbance. We also reduce weeds, which is important. Regenerative agriculture, principle 3. By using companion planting, we can encourage crop diversity, which feeds pollinators, integrates pest management, and nurses vegetable crops during the growing season. Regenerative agriculture, principle 4. Companion planting with perennial herbs and nitrogen-fixing cover crops helps keep living roots in the soil year-round. Living roots nurture active soil life, reduce soil compaction, keep the soil aerated, allowing oxygen to get to the roots, and also helps increase organic matter in the soil. Let's look at some of the benefits of companion planting. Companion planting protects soil life, and again, it's because we're leaving the soil life undisturbed. It encourages soil regeneration. As long as there's living roots in the soil, and especially perennial roots, there is a turnover of organic matter. It locks carbon into the soil where it belongs. instead of releasing it into the air. Also, when we practice companion planting, we get higher vegetable yields. With companion planting, fruits and vegetables are more flavorful. It's also less work for the gardener because a lot of the things like pest management are taken care of by the plants. It integrates pest management right into your garden plan, and it feeds pollinators, which encourages more fruitfulness of your plants. So now that you know the importance of companion planting and regenerative agriculture, what herbs can we plant to make it happen? Well, we're looking for some herbs for pollinators. We're looking for some nurse plants that are going to kind of be the nurse to help plants that are doing poorly start to do better. And we're also looking for herbs that can take the part of integrative pest management, and also other herbs that can be pest traps to keep them away from your important food plants, and instead trap them in the leaves and flowers of kind of a sacrifice plant. Alliums. Now, we talked about alliums in our Herb of the Month Club last month, and they're really an awesome benefit in the garden. First of all, their strong sulfur scent confuses insect pests, but it also confuses molds and mice. So they're really good to plant around your fruit trees to, in the winter when there's a danger that orchard mice may come in and destroy the roots of your trees, especially if you have a long snowy season. The scent of alliums like chives and Egyptian onions can confuse these voles or orchard mice, and they will go somewhere else. Even in winter, the scent is there. Alliums also attract pollinators, especially when they're in flower. They are shallow rooted, so they do well with other root vegetables like carrots and radish. They confuse and repel carrot rust fly and radish root maggots. But don't put alliums near your beans or peas because they inhibit the growth of beans and peas. Garlic also repels Japanese beetles, so garlic is a great one to have not just in a garlic bed, but around your garden to repel Japanese beetles if that's a problem for you. Umbellifers. Now, these are the plants in the carrot family, like dill and darra, which is like Queen Anne's lace, parsley, for instance, fennel. Now, I want to caution right now, fennel is not a plant you should plant with other vegetables. It doesn't seem to do well as a companion, so just keep that in mind. Even though fennel is an umbellifer, it's not a good one to have in the same garden bed as other vegetables because it draws things from them and neither one will grow well. Fennel as an umbellifer on the edge of your garden away from other plants is a great idea because you can use the same qualities of umbellifers with fennel. Just don't put it in the same bed with dill or with other vegetables. Fennel just is a loner. Umbellifer flowers attract predatory wasps. And these are the wasps. They don't sting people, but they lay their eggs on the backs of caterpillars. And then as the wasp egg hatches, they start to feed on the caterpillar, and that interrupts the life cycle of things like tomato hornworms and cabbage moths. Their strong scent confuses insect pests, and they also can repel slugs if you have enough of them. The plant they're protecting with their scent needs to be in close proximity for the scent to work. So what I find is when I'm planting a row of, say, broccoli, I will put the dill seeds right in the same row or the parsley seeds right in the same row. And what you'll find is it will protect that row or the row on either side, but 2 rows down, you'll still get slug damage and you'll still get damage from broccoli worms. So what I need to do is I have to, where I live, plant the dill and the parsley right in the row of every row of brassica to protect those plants. If I'm building a raised bed, I will put a dill plant on either end of the raised bed in order to protect those plants both from cabbage butterfly and also from slugs. These plants are also very attractive to pollinators. Because they have so many small flowers, they're a very abundant nectar source, and so butterflies will come to them as well as bees and other pollinators. So these are great to have close by your zucchini plants and your squash, your melons, those plants that are dependent on pollination. However, you do want to plant dill away from tomatoes, but nearby, because in the case of dill and tomatoes, tomato hornworms actually prefer dill, and so dill becomes a trap plant for tomato hornworms. So don't put dill right in the same row with your tomatoes. Basil works as a great companion for tomatoes that you can plant right in the same row. Nasturtium is another trap plant, like dill is with tomato hornworm. Nasturtium, they're related to brassicas, although they used to be in the brassica family, and now scientists have moved them to their own family. But nasturtium, like other brassicas, attracts cabbage butterflies, and so you can use it as a trap crop for cabbage butterflies. Only if you're going to do that, plant it away from your other brassicas so that the butterflies are attracted to the nasturtium. My nasturtium have always been able to outgrow any damage by cabbage butterflies, and I can easily hand pick the caterpillars off if necessary. But because I also plant dill, there's usually lots of predatory wasps around my garden that take care of them, so I don't have a big problem. The other thing about nasturtium is it is a trap for aphids. So if you've been having problems with aphids on your broccoli, especially later in the season, planting nasturtium nearby but far enough away that it's not attracting them to your broccoli bed or your kale bed, nasturtium ends up being a trap for the aphids. Also, nasturtium flowers and leaves are edible. Of course, not the ones that have aphids on them, but they're awesome in compound butter, they're awesome in pesto. Nurse plants. Now, nurse plants are interesting. Most of them are bioaccumulators, so they accumulate, and we're going to talk more about that in the next lesson, but they accumulate things like minerals and calcium in their leaves, and then they release that to other plants growing nearby. And it has something to do with the mycorrhizal relationship between these plants and the plants growing near them. And we're going to talk about that in lesson 3. But just know these are the plants that if you have some plants that aren't doing well, maybe a perennial tree that's suffering because of insect damage or anything like that, then planting these nearby can sometimes be the boost that the plant needs to overcome whatever's attacking it. Calendula, chamomile, yarrow are fabulous for just being around other plants and encouraging with pollination and helping with them overcome any kind of fungal bacterial thing. And I think it's because of the mycorrhizal relationship these plants have with the bacteria and fungi in the soil. It allows them to communicate and share their resources with the plants that are growing near them. More about that in lesson 3. Broccoli and thyme particularly are bioaccumulators, and as well as nurse plants, and you can cut them and drop them at the foot of, say, I've done this with fruit trees that were doing poorly, and within a couple days, if I just chop my comfrey down, break it up with a machete and drop it on the ground around a fruit tree that's struggling, within a couple days I see some new growth on that fruit tree. It's amazing. One year we had some plants badly damaged by orchard mice during the winter and stripped the whole bark from the trees, and they should have died immediately because they were completely ringed. But I took some comfrey leaves and I wrapped the tree with comfrey leaves, and we repeated the treatment several times during the growing season. And those trees that had been damaged actually went on to produce fruit. They flowered, they matured fruit. Now, they didn't last very many years afterwards. We did have to replace them. But for the season that they were damaged, comfrey nursed the tree back to health. However, the trees were weakened, and so they only lived a couple more years after that. Aromatic herbs. Now, aromatic herbs, you should plant these throughout your garden because they do confuse insect pests. They're also attractive to pollinators when they flower. Now, a lot of these are mint family plants, and so if it's a mint that you're planting, do be careful to keep the roots contained so it doesn't take over your vegetable garden. They're very attractive to pollinators, and also their pollen is helpful to feed bees, allows them to raise their young nearby, so that it increases the number of pollinators that you have in your vicinity. Now let's look at just a couple of really important companion plants and what they can do for your garden. Marigolds and calendula both kill root nematodes in their root zone. So it's an awesome idea to plant both calendula and marigold throughout your garden area. They also attract pollinators, which is important, of course, to any plants that you have that need pollination to set fruit. Then Mediterranean herbs like rosemary and lavender, they come under the aromatic herb, but they should definitely be planted together, but away from vegetables that need a lot of water. So if you have vegetables that you're going to water every week, you don't want to have rosemary and lavender planted in the wake of that water, because they have very low watering needs. So you don't want to soak their roots. They are strongly scented. They have a lot of nectar in their flowers, those small flowers, and they do attract pollinators to your garden. In the case of lavender particularly, their strong scent repels codling moth from fruit trees. So if you're building a fruit tree guild in your garden, lavender is a great plant to have near your fruit trees. Louise Riot, she is the pioneer of companion planting. She's the author of the book Carrots Love Tomatoes, Roses Love Garlic. She said, vegetable growers find that companion planting provides many benefits, one of which is protection from pests. A major enemy of the carrot is the carrot fly, whereas the leek suffers from the onion fly and leek moth. Yet when leek and carrot live together in companionship, the strong and strangely different smell of the partner plant repels the insects so much that they do not even attempt to lay their eggs on the neighbor plant. They take off speedily to get away from the smell. This is why mixed plantings give better insect control than a monoculture, where many plants of the same type are planted together in row after row. Even when plants are affected by diseases, a mixed plant culture can usually alleviate the situation. In this lesson, we talked about the benefits of companion planting, which herbs are important companions to vegetables, and how to use herbs, particularly in an integrative pest management. Your homework. Consider which insect pests are the most bothersome in your garden. Find the companion plant that repels that specific pest, and then find the seed and plan to plant it this year. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about nitrogen-fixing plants, as I promised, to use in your garden, and also cover crops to use in the garden. And this is, of course, so we don't leave the soil bare. We're also going to talk a little bit in more depth about bioaccumulator plants that increase plant fertility. I'll see you in the next lesson.